Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me. And that's not the 1,763 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. My goodness, thank you all. I say it all the time, but we had the most successful September in terms of subscribers, watch time, views in the history of the channel. And that's all thanks to you guys. That's thanks to your likes, your comments, your sharing the videos. Thank you all so much. I thought it was a joke that we might be able to hit 2,000 subs by the end of the year, but if we keep at this pace, it ain't gonna be a joke. So thank you all once again, but that's not why you're here today. Why you're here today is I unfortunately have a lot more games that I gave up on. Even though I've done 3 of these videos, and every time in the video I think I found them all, after the last one, I found a list that probably will let me do this a couple of more times, and then I keep adding to it with games that I've given up since the last one. But if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
So let's start this off with a fun one. So this is technically cheating because I have gone through and beaten this game. However, when I originally purchased it, I did give up on it. And the reason I bring it up is because it is the legendary Super Mario RPG, which is getting a remake in what? A little over a month from now, which I'm super excited to play. But when I picked this up, I was not excited to play it. Now at the time, I had never played an RPG. And it's funny, I didn't know RPG stood for role-playing game. I just thought RPG was the style of a turn-based game. I thought that's what I was like, oh, that's an RPG. And it didn't click with me that that also stood for role-playing game until years later. So putting it in, I played this. This was one of the last Super Nintendo games I purchased. I might even have bought it when the N64 was out. And for a lot of you guys who remember or don't remember when the N64 came out, it came out with 2 games, Mario 64 and Pilot Wings, and for the most part you couldn't find Pilot Wings anywhere. The next game that came out was either Wave Race 64 or Cruisin' USA, but that was a couple of months. So after you get 120 stars in Mario 64, there wasn't really much to do with your new system, and for a lot of us we had Super Nintendos, and Mario RPG was sort of a late release. It looked gorgeous, but it had this combat that I wasn't really familiar with. So I popped it in. I got decently far into it. I believe I got to the part where Bowser joins your party, which at the time was a huge novelty as well, as you never had the chance to play as Bowser or have Bowser be on your team. He was always the villain. It'd be akin to having Ganondorf join up with you in a Zelda game. It just, the novelty alone was super cool. But I was not a huge fan of Mallow. Gino was cool and all, and I just wasn't at an age where I could really appreciate the combat and the music. I think I had to have been 10, so I put it down, and I put it down for years. Now, ironically, I came back to it after I played Final Fantasy VII, and by then, I did understand, oh, this is what an RPG combat's like, this is how you play it. And then going back and playing Mario RPG and understanding the nuance, how they added the ability to have the Mario-ness, the timing combat. I went back, played it, loved it, beat it, looking forward to the remake. Wanted to start off with this one just because the game is coming out soon, and because even I could be guilty of giving up on a game that is very good, and sometimes you can give up on a game and go back to it and have an absolute blast. Alright, now let's get to the rest of these games that I gave up on that I haven't beaten. So one of them, which was a PlayStation 1 game. So this wasn't actually my game, this was my older brother's game, and funnily enough, the name of the game is Lucky Luke. Now, I believe this is based off of a cartoon or a comic strip, something of that nature. And we actually really enjoyed playing this. This was his buy. I don't know if he bought it or his wife bought it, but it was a unique platformer. I believe it's like an action platformer. But the problem with it was that we got to a section where we could not progress through the story. And we even, I think it was in stage 2. It was pretty early on, and you just got to a wall and you couldn't get it down. The manual didn't give us a hint of what to do. The buttons didn't let us go past it, and it just, God, this had to have been late 90s, to probably 98, 99. And there wasn't any information online to to find out what the hell to do about it. And we just put it down and never went back to it. And then eventually, unfortunately, my older brother got robbed in mid 2009 or so, and they took his game. So we never had a chance to go back to it. And I just happened to see this at my local gaming store maybe 4 or 5 months ago for $10. So I picked it up, and it's one that I'd like to go back and check out. So Lucky Luke, another game that I gave up on, though technically it was because we could not progress any further. Now let's move to one that was a big disappointment. Super disappointment, because I had heard how good this series was. So it had games on the PS2 and the original Xbox and the GameCube, I believe. And then the series went dormant. It was part of those extreme sports that were crazy. It's not Tony Hawk, it is SSX for the Xbox 360. Now, when this game was being previewed, they made it sound like it was going to be a return to form. I missed a lot of the games of the PS2 generation because I was playing World of Warcraft and I went off to college, one of them being SSX. I'm also not a huge guy of extreme sports games. I never got into the Tony Hawks. I didn't play SSX. So this was one of those instances in my life where I go and I pick up the latest version of a popular franchise to see what it's like. And unfortunately, it wasn't that great. And I'm not alone in this. When the game came out, it had a lot of poor reviews. I want to say this was one of the first instances of DRM in a game, because this was when Electronic Arts came out with one of those things where you needed to have to log into an EA account in order for things to be online, and wouldn't allow you to play. There was a lot of things outside of the actual game itself that was annoying, but then the actual gameplay really stripped down some of the over-the-topness. They tried to go for a more realistic view, and it just wasn't that much fun. And kind of with these things, when you're an arcade series, stripping away what makes it an arcade series isn't going to do a lot to please existing fans. And then when a new fan, or not a new person, buys in, it makes it so that you're not really, okay, I made a mistake in buying this. And unfortunately, SSX has been dormant ever since. It's funny because Electronic Arts did this a lot I think this was around 2010. They brought out a new Blitz, they brought out a new NBA Jam, a new SSX, and then, I don't know if it was just for copyrights or things of that nature. The NBA Jam and the Blitz were great. SSX was not, and so I want to go back and play some of the ones on the PS2 generation just to see what the game series is supposed to be like, and I think I do have a few of them. I've heard SSX 3 Tricky is the one to really check out, but let me know which one would be a good one to check out. Alright, here's one that my wife bought for me, and I am a huge fan of the television series Lost. Season 1 is one of the greatest seasons of television in my opinion, ever. And even though it does not completely stick the landing, I think in hindsight and retrospect, if you take away the speculation game and what fans built up, if you just take it for what you got, it is still a decent series and will hold up in the long term. And I'm also just a big fan for Sawyer too, so I got that going for me. But there was a Lost Via Domus almost walking simulator adventure game for the Xbox 360 that I saw got horrible reviews, so I didn't pick it up. My lovely wife, at the time when we were dating, she would do these things where she would go and find all these cheap $5, $6 games at GameStop or at thrift stores and give those to me for Christmas or my birthday. And this was one of them, which obviously, to her credit, you see a game called Lost. You know I love the television series Lost. I actually got her to watch it. This looked like a home run. So, it wasn't. I tried playing it. Did not. This takes place, I want to say, in between seasons 2 and 3 because it has the cover for 3, but it does not really add much to the lore or the series. I don't believe they even had any of the actual actors voice acting it for it.
You are now officially a survivor of Flight 815.
You would remember if it were true.
And it is not very good. I probably should go back and check it out again. It might be worth a laugh, but it was just one of those things where it's cooler that it exists than actually going through and playing it. Now, here's one for a series that I loved. The first game, it actually was one of the main reasons why I bought an Xbox 360. The second one I got on launch, loved it. Third one I got on launch, absolutely loved it. Played hours and hours of the multiplayer, and then they said the series was over. But of course, it's not. They announced a fourth game, but it wasn't Gears of War 4, it was Gears of War Judgment. And they have this weird contrived storyline where Baird, one of the main side characters from the from Gears of War 1 through 3, who I really liked. He always reminded me of the dude from Contra. I believe Lance was his name. So he's the main character, but he's on trial for war crimes or something of that nature. And instead of having a through line of events, you're retelling events, because by this point supposedly the war is over, or it takes place between games. I can't remember exactly how it works, but it's just a really odd way of telling the story. It kind of fills in gaps for what Baird and Cole were doing, but it's just not quite what we wanted or what we expected. I didn't even pick it up when it came out. I believe I played it when it was the free game with gold at some point, and I maybe got an hour or two into it before I just put it down, because I'm like, all right, this is just a week. Like, I actually went out and bought this for maybe $10 in the last few months, just so I could have a physical copy of it, so that I could go through and play it down the line. But eventually we did get a Gears 4 and a Gears 5, which Gears 4 was okay. I have Gears 5 and I haven't played it, but I still would like to go through and check out Judgment, just so I could refresh why I stopped playing it, because it's a little hazy. But anytime I ask, or anytime someone talks about it, it's all kind of the same sentiment of like, yeah, I really wasn't feeling it. And maybe it's something akin to the judge system with Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, where sometimes having too much outside of the story, where you're retelling the story, kind of takes the agency out of it, where there's no actual through line or anything that's really compelling you to play it. Alright, so here's one that I really did not like, even though a lot of people loved it, and I put in so much time with it. I actually got Jen to play it too, because it did have local co-op. So you could play as 4 different characters. I played as the Sentry character, which might have been a mistake. I should have played as the Ninja, but I wanted to try something a little different, and that was Borderlands 2. The first game that really introduced me to the Diablo-style looter-shooter, constantly picking up new weapons, constantly picking up small increments, small upgrades, small augments, which, yeah, I did that kind of thing in World of Warcraft, but I like it when I don't replace gear all the time. It was one of the problems I had with Hogwarts Legacy, is you're constantly getting new items and replacing them, to the point where getting an upgrade or getting an item doesn't feel all that good. I mean, Final Fantasy 16 had this problem too, where you kill these big epic bosses, and then you get this new item to create something that then is replaced 5 minutes later by just a normal upgrade or just something randomly. Now, it didn't bother as much in that game, because it wasn't as focused on the different minutia, but in a game like Borderlands 2, where you have different types of ammunition, you have all these different augments and all these different things you're picking up, it just did not appeal to me at all. And I got pretty decently far in this game. I unlocked the Minecraft level, which was really cool, and it just, at a certain point, I got over it. Likely something else came out that I wanted to play, so I put it down and never went back and beat it. I was very far in it too. I was at least 20 hours, something, maybe not, I don't know. Either way, it bums me out that I didn't beat it, because I like to finish what I start, but I really just it did not appeal to me with the style of that game, which unfortunately is everywhere. I found that same thing in Destiny, found that same thing in The Division. A lot of different games where I mean, I love WoW for giving us the color-coded, green is uncommon, blue is rare, purple is epic, you know, orange and all that, but if I have to see that in every freaking game for the rest of eternity, I am going to want to scream. Alright, moving off of the Xbox 360, strangely enough, this game, or this review I did, gets a lot of views out of nowhere. I'm not sure why. It was the first video I did in 2018 for a game that when I read about it in Game Informer, I was super hyped for, but I didn't have a PS2 at the time, and then when the game eventually came out, it got lukewarm reviews, very poor reviews to be honest, so I didn't pick it up. I found it years later at a thrift store for $3, and that is Legion Legend of Excalibur. And yes, this is not a great game. It very much plays like a Diablo clone, kind of that isometric view going around. Your characters automatically attack, akin to, you know, kind of like computer RPGs with Icewind Dale, things of that nature. But it is so hard. It is so hard to control the different characters. I even got myself stuck in a circle and had to restart a level, and the levels are long. They're like an hour long sometimes, and if you lose, there are no checkpoints. You go back to the beginning, and you can play, originally start off as Arthur, and they give you an origin story, which is kind of meh, and you just get to these points of unwinnable difficulty, and there's not very much feedback. So when you strike something, there's no real feel that you're hitting them. There's no sound effects for that. So, and these characters are bullet sponges, so it just really becomes an arduous task to play it. I stuck through it till around level 4. It was really one of the first games I gave up on for the channel that wasn't sort of like an NES hard thing. But this one was just, it felt broken, and it made sense why it had such poor reviews when it came out. And it's funny, it gets a lot of views. I don't know why. Maybe it's my handsome face on the thumbnail, who knows. But yeah, Legion, Legend of Excalibur. Stay away from this game. I know it sounds cool, it is not. And even to this day, we really haven't gotten a good King Arthur game. Every time they try it, something goes wrong. The Order 1886 goes wrong. I mean, really, it's Knights of the Round on the Super Nintendo, but that's just a soulless beat-em-up for the most part. And King of Dragons is a far better version, in my opinion. All right, moving on to the PS4 era. So I picked this game up fairly early, close to launch, and that was Wolfenstein II. Now, I hadn't played any of the Wolfenstein games at this time. This one is 2017, got great reviews. I was very interested in checking it out. Once again, where I dipped my toes into the series. It was the same year the Switch came out, and this just looked really, really cool. So I put it on, and if you guys have played this game, you know it starts off with a flashback scene where they have you holding a shotgun to a canine. And I was playing this with my wife in the room, who, that was a big no-no. So, and I don't blame her. I thought they went a little too far with that as well. You don't necessarily have to do the deed yourself, but if you don't, your dad then comes and does it, and it's just like, it's an unnecessary scene, in my opinion. You don't have to go that far. And so she pretty much said, like, you're not playing that. And I agreed. So that was the reason why I have not played Wolfenstein 2 and will not be playing it. And I honestly, I don't know, it's good shelfware. But yeah, I still hear it was a decent game, but then with Youngbloods coming out, it really tanked the whole series in general. So I feel like they got karma for doing that unnecessary scene to that poor doggo. But let me know if I'm wrong and if I should have sacked up. But I don't know, I didn't feel like to need to play that any longer after that. Now, another PS4 game that was made by the gentleman who made Resident Evil. This was supposedly going to be a return to form. This was before Resident Evil 7 came out, so this was still when everyone was reeling from Resident Evil 6. And that was a game that came out early in the PS4, Xbox One lifecycle. It still even had copies, I believe, on the PS3 and the Xbox 360. And that is The Evil Within. And I got maybe 5-6 hours into this before I just put it down. I'm also a big wimp when it comes to horror games, so I will say that. But I don't enjoy games where it's one thing to feel like you're underpowered and that by taking on enemies, it's going to put you at a massive disadvantage in resources. It's another thing when you are completely helpless and you will not be able to take on anyone and you just have to run. It's one of the reasons why I never picked up Alien Isolation. I'm not a fan of unkillable enemies, and the way this game starts, you're in a like a meat locker being hung up, and you're trying to escape from this dude who you do escape from, but it didn't appeal to me. I already don't like horror games enough where I feel like I'm constantly vulnerable, but then knowing that I have no way to fight back makes it so it's just not enjoyable for me to play it. And let me know if that's what you guys think about these. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the ones that I have enjoyed, like Resident Evil, Dead Space, things of that nature, you feel like you have a fighter's chance. And now you don't want to go too far off the other deep end where it's not even stressful. Something like, say, Callisto Protocol has that problem, which we'll get into later. I'm actually playing that actively right now, and I will be doing a Halloween games video, so we'll talk about it then. But let me know what you guys think. I've heard mixed reviews of Evil Within 2 as well. Just not what we were expecting, but still a series that warranted a sequel, though nothing ever really came of it. So I don't really feel too bad giving up on that one. Now, one that I do feel bad about giving up on, it's just I am not a fan of asymmetric games. I think I'm going to be, but because I really do not care about poning noobs and being that Call of Duty bro who racks up kills or being the person to kill. Even though this one is much more team-based oriented if you're playing with your friends, which I did have a friend group that was heavily playing this, but that was Friday the 13th, the game. And I played this like once or twice. I just was not interested in it. And even one time I played it, I got logged in, and then I got logged in as the big protagonist from the Jason series who takes out Jason a few times and is one of the unlocks where he shows up towards the end of a match and can really do damage to Jason. But I showed up as Billy, and then I got killed by Jason, and then everyone in the lobby was just so rude and so mean. It was just one of those things like, you know what? I don't have the patience to learn this game where I'm dealing with a bunch of jackasses that are going to insult me for not knowing what I'm doing, even though I've never played the game. I really was on the fence about playing this to begin with. You know, I didn't like stuff like Dead by Daylight either, so I just put it down. And I was glad to back it because, you know, I was hoping they'd come out with a single-player campaign where you could play as Jason, or because that sounds a lot more interesting to me. You know, things like Until Dawn and The Quarry. I love this stuff because it's nice being in that scenario, but actually just being in a deathmatch, I don't know, there's just not much appeal to that for me. Let me know if I'm alone on that. Alright, moving on to a game for the Genesis that still haunts me to this day because I couldn't beat the damn thing because it has a freaking timer. And I got all the way to Kingpin several times and I would just run out of time. Now, I haven't tried doing this in a long time, but this is one of the things I would talk about where I would go back to games every 5 to 6 years to see how I've improved. And one of those ones I would do is the Genesis version of SpiderMan. SpiderMan being my favorite cartoon at the time, the 94 animated Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. I'm not a big comic book guy. I never really have been, but I've always really liked Spider-Man and his rogues gallery of villains, Lizard, Sandman, Hobgoblin, things of that nature. And so in this game, you go through 10 different stages. It's got decent enough combat. It's kind of an action platformer, and it has a timer on it. And when I was a little kid, I couldn't get past the Sandman stage, and I eventually, I think through just pure luck, I realized you could hit the fire hydrant and instantly kill the Sandman, and then that let me progress past that. But I could never get past Kingpin, and if I remember Mary Jane being lowered into a vat of acid, and by the time I would get there, every single time, the timer would be down to like 10 seconds. So I don't know if there's more time that you can find throughout the game or how that works, or if I just need to speed up the process. But I've never been able to beat Spider-Man on the Genesis, and it really ticks me off, even to this day. Now, if you'll notice, my copy's a little well-loved. That was one of my brother's dogs who left that, because, like I said, he held on to, he got most of the Genesis games when we split up our games, but I did get this back. And, you know, I like having the imperfect things sometimes, because it tells a story. Yeah, I don't care about selling it. This is my copy. This is my childhood copy of Spider-Man. So, yeah, the case isn't perfect and all, but still, it's mine. I know where it came from. And one day, I will manage to beat it. You know, someday, maybe soon. That'd be a fun one to go through and try and beat. All right, getting down to the last few here. One that I want to talk about for the Switch, we got a few Switch games. So this was a game I picked up at the Switch's launch. Now, I love Bomberman 64, but I never really played any of the regular Bomberman games. So when I picked up Bomberman R, I didn't really know what I was in for. I didn't have a lot of friends to play locally. I don't remember it having an online. I don't even think the online of Switch was out yet. And then the storyline was decent enough, but also I was playing with the Joy-Cons. This was before I got a Pro Controller, which maybe the Pro Controller would make it play better. But I lost interest. Breath of the Wild was out, was much more interesting to me. And soon after that, 2017 was a banger year. There's a lot of good games that came out that year. So Bomberman R, even though I picked it up, I just lost interest very quickly into it. Never picked it up again. So I know they've added to it a lot over the years, but it still just isn't really something I've really had much interest in checking out. So let me know if you guys would say to give it another shot. Now here's one that I did give a shot. I've heard a lot of people loving this game, and to the point where I was bummed that I didn't get the physical copy for the PS4. But then they did announce a physical copy for the Switch, and that is Retro City Rampage DX. Now, I thought I would like this game because it is so chock full of references and zaniness, and it plays like a GTA clone, but in a top-down 2D perspective, so kind of like the way the original GTA was. But it seemed a little bit too tongue-in-cheek to the point of where it was trying too hard, and I didn't appreciate it. It was like, you know, sometimes when you get into these games that are so overly humorized or so much full of member berries to where the reference itself is the content, but there isn't much content outside of the references, it kind of turns me off, and that's how I felt with this game. And it didn't feel that well, didn't control that well. And much in the vein of that, a game that I thought I would enjoy was The Escapist. Now, this is on all the other platforms too, and not for the exact same reasons, but kind of, it just didn't appeal to me. You're breaking out of prison, but then the idea sounds better than the actual execution, especially once you get in there. And as much as I appreciate 2D art styles, sometimes when it looks as lazy as it does with these games, it's just hard to really want to invest much time into it. And I put a few hours into it, but then when it's just talking about doing routines and having to do this and that and having to find reagents and a crafting system, maybe that was it. Maybe the crafting system turned me off. I just said, you know what? We're done here. We're done here. I'm not playing this one. All right, now 2 more we're going to talk about. So one is actually a Xbox download title by the name of Crimson Alliance. So this was a game that I really enjoyed. It was around the same time Bastion came out, so in 2011, 2012, sometime around there. And Jen and I played it. You create your own character. It's kind of like a Diablo clone, top-down. And what's so funny is I played through this game so many times and then would restart, and I'd never quite get to the end. And maybe that's because it didn't have a physical version or just because of the repetitiveness of the game. But I would always get 6, 7, 8, 9 missions into it and just stop. And still, to this day, it's a game that I'd love to go back and play more of, and no one really talks about it. Crimson Alliance, if you remember this game, let me know, because I had a good time playing it. It's very like a prototypical Gauntlet style game. You have a melee guy, a mage, and I think an archer, something of that nature. I don't know. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. But gave it up, and one that I'd like to go back to. And I've always been waiting for it to come back as a physical release. Like a lot of these games that were even digital only have eventually gotten physical releases. That one did not. And then the last one, this was a game that was one of the first pickups I got from a Metal Jesus Hidden Gems video back in 2014. I somehow stumbled across his channel with his Hidden Gems for the Wii. Not sure why I was looking for Hidden Gems for the Wii. I think this is when I bought a Wii U. That's what it was. I bought a Wii U, and I was looking for more games to play on it, and I knew it had the ability to play Wii games, and as I've mentioned before, I never owned a Wii. I missed a lot of the Wii's selections, and so I found his channel through Hidden Gems for the Wii. And one of the games that really stood out and seemed interesting was a game called Lost in Shadow. And I gotta say, this is a good game. Of all the games I've talked about here, outside of Mario RPG, this is probably probably the best game next to it, in my opinion. It just, I played a decent amount through it, but it wasn't as, I expected too much from it. And that's kind of where sometimes you'll get these recommendations of hidden gems and you'll go into them expecting it to be too good, because usually they're hidden gems for a reason. So it's one of those things where, are you looking for a banger experience? Well, if you are, then likely it's not going to be something that slipped under the radar. If you're looking for a unique experience, or if you want something that's a little different, or kind of almost like a refresher or a cleanser, that's more where hidden gems come in. And Lost in Shadow is definitely one of those. And I think I was just looking for something a little bit more engaging, because it's a lot more puzzle-based than I was expecting. But a solid game, well worth picking up. I think it's gotten more expensive in the last few years, unfortunately. But it is definitely something that is not typical for the Wii. It's very much a platformer. You control a shadow where you can only move in the shadows of the foreground. So if you run a lever and then it drops a bridge and then that makes a new shadow of the bridge, you can then go over it. And the enemies you fight are the shadows of the enemies in the real world too. So it's a very interesting concept. I was a little disappointed that it didn't do more of it than what I was expecting. But yeah, there you go. That is 16 more games I gave up on. For shame, for shame. Let me know about some games you guys gave up on. Let me know what you thought about today's video. Just once again, I am going to say it till I'm blue in the teeth. Thank you all so much. The growth really is just incredible. I can't believe that we are already over halfway to 1,800 subs when just a couple of months, God, we were still in 1,500, 1,600. I don't know. You guys are nuts. Thank you all so much for the support. Let's get to 2,000 by the end of the year. Let's do it. I have an idea. So I have a bunch of sealed games that I don't like being sealed, and I'm thinking maybe for the 2000 video we will go ahead and unseal all those and piss off all the sealed collectors. Nothing crazy in it, nothing crazy, but still some sealed Wii games and Xbox 360 and things like that. But anyways, that's what you get for this week, guys. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. I have a Patreon. I have the link if you want some discounts on some cool shirts from Into the AM. And as always, it's been so nice getting a hold of you guys. Take care.